First of all, hopefully the current change isn't a major change. I'm hoping that I suspect it'll be bigger than they think, because these things always need some work to go on. First, one thing I should mention is that we do have fun in the middle of all this. Is that okay? That's one thing I'd say. But going back, I suppose the most important thing that we do is we're upfront. We have a bond of trust that we don't break. We absolutely want to be upfront with our customers and upfront with our team. And I think, that's one of the key things, even when we went through, you mentioned BUPA, at the end, if I can put it that way, when BUPA decided to leave the market, that would have been a very traumatic period for us. And you can imagine standing in front of the entire team at that time in a pretty local environment, and you're telling them they're going to be out of a job, or they're going to have to go through a consultation period, as we did. It's a very difficult thing to do, but at the same time, we were transparent in what we did. We were upfront with the team. We told them what we thought was going to happen. Now, it didn't transpire that way, but we were upfront with it. I'm glad to say that at the time we had a white knight come over the hill in Sean Quinn, what became then was Quinn Healthcare. But throughout that, we managed to keep the fundamental ethos of the BUPA ethos, and even today, a significant amount of that team are from that original culture, and putting the team and the customer at the centre of what we do. I mentioned it earlier on there. We purposely have avoided terms like employee or staff or anything like that, and that has come from that era where we believe that we do operate as a team, and everything we do is fundamentally based around delivering the trust and keeping that bond of trust to our customers, because we sell an intangible. Okay. You can't grab it. So going back to what the insights are, if you can put it that way, I actually don't know in a way. Some of it comes very instinctually. But one of the key things I would say is that you learn to communicate, and you have to formally communicate in an informal manner, okay, which sounds contradictory. If you take the transitions that we've been doing, as you mentioned, we would gather teams together on a very regular basis. Sometimes they would be all the entire town hall events, as we call them, but more often than not, they're going on to a particular floor. And I personally have done this in BUPA in the UK when I looked after the operations there, with very large groups of people. We would gather, say, go into a floor, customer service floor, contact centre floor, and take a third out, and take them aside and say, look, this is what we're doing. Be as upfront as you possibly can, and take the questions and be honest in the answers, even if the answer says, I really can't go into that, or I don't know. John, I think that's one of the key insights of those transitions and changes, I think.
For a lot of leaders, they might choose to send out an email and communicate in that way. So that's kind of very formal. But this idea of actually standing up in front of people and giving them the opportunity to ask you any question and building that sense is something. Where did you kind of come across that first, or was that just naturally instinctive to you?
Well, I think you need both, by the way. I do think you need emails as well. Okay. There's a time and place for both. I think it is instinctual, but I think also it comes from the background of coming from very large organisations, then to a greenfield site, as BUPA was in '96, and having the personal interaction with people, and realising that if you're very upfront with people and you have that communications going with them, that they're far more likely to be that guiding coalition for you, the ambassador for you. With regards the questions, if you can get people who are able to ask questions in front of the group, then people are going to ask the questions that others wouldn't. And it really does help. I'm not sure, John, if I'm answering your questions
you are,
there.
But to some leaders, they might say, I'd be very vulnerable in a situation like that because they could ask me X, Y, or Z. So how are you so confident that you'll be able to sort of say, actually, I'm not answering that, or the like, because?
I suppose experience has shown that the more upfront you are, the better it is. Even when we go through, and we've gone through a process lately, but it's the same process we'd have gone through 4 or 5 years ago as well, when people were walking around the building. We were very clear that our presentations were to take place in the building, not in a hotel hiding away somewhere.
So just to explain, this is when the company was effectively up for sale.
That's correct. When we did the original management buyout, there was other parties that came in as well, and in the current we restructured lately as well. And in the course of that restructuring, you had to show off the business to people and let them see what you were doing. There's a due diligence to be gone through. So in those presentations, we insisted that they take place in our business, because you're seeing our business. We set our priorities, which were, we've got to look after our customers, you've got to look after our team. There were, our top two priorities were that in the first instance. And if you wanted to see how we operate, it really has to take place in where we do our business and where we build that trust, right? So they came in, the groups, there was a good few groups come in, I'm glad to say. And when we took them around, we didn't hide them. We said that they were free to go around, they could chat with anybody in the building. If they asked questions, we made sure that they could ask whoever they liked, and we were confident that the people would answer the question in the manner in which we would be proud of them, because that's the way the team are.
And were those organisations surprised at this approach?
I think a lot of them were, genuinely, particularly the consultancy and the bankers and all that, were just amazed that they could go, because they're so used to having a different approach to that. But I think that was to our credit, and it was to the team's credit. They were good about it. And actually it then gave the inspiration, I think, to, it moved the process on a lot quicker, and I suppose gave those who were looking at the business confidence in what we were doing and saying matched. There was because again, we're back to this intangible, and they could see our values being lived out.
I was about to say, because people talk about respect being important, but how do you actually live respect? And respect in that regard was actually, believing in your people enough to let anybody ask them any question.
Yeah.
And been really transparent about the process, not running away to a hotel.
No, and that's, I think there's also, it's also fair, because it was both ways. People could see that there's things going on, so you weren't hiding. So there's a fairness to that as well. You have to respect. And
I'm just wondering, because a lot of organisations might sort of say, well, there's confidentiality and all these non-disclosure agreements and the like. So they kind of, in a way, use that to sort of say we couldn't possibly do that, we couldn't be that open. I mean, you obviously were affected by confidentiality agreements too. How did you handle that?
Well, in most cases, first of all, the confidentiality agreements have to be honoured, so we'll get over that, right? Yeah. But for example, in the transaction, as the transaction is taking place or whatever, you can be asked a question and be honest with the answer. If the answer is you can't discuss that or you can't go into that, for example, the name of a party that you're dealing with at a particular time or whatever, that's fair enough. But you can articulate that there is a transaction going on, that there are people looking down the hole, if I could put it that way, and that this is a process that's going to go on, and you expect it to go on for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and as soon as we can let you know something, we will let you know something. And sometimes you have to go around and let people know that you've nothing to tell them. Sure. That there is, just want to give you an update that the business is going such and such. As for the transaction way that's working, it's at a particular state at the moment where we've moved it on a bit, but we haven't made significant progress, or it's not where we'd like it to be, or whatever. But it's at that level you can tell people, and people want to know that. If that's what they can hear, they want, also things are moving on, or it's moving on well. You're upfront with that bit. And
when you chose to take on with the management team the business yourselves, the team must have been delighted, were they?
Well, we got a great reaction, and to be honest with you, we got a great reaction at the time, I have to say. And with when I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago now, we got a fantastic reaction with EIG. I have to say, really, really brilliant. There's obviously some comical things that happened along the way, I have to say. But we stood in front of the team at 4 o'clock kind of stuff. I stood there myself, and I had a great chap, Jay Sheehy, from New York, standing next to me, and we actually, we had met each other, I suppose, 4 or 5 times at this stage, and we both came from the same place, that there would be an honesty in what we would say. And we didn't rehearse what we were going to say. We had 4 or 5 points to make, and we were able to tag each other very well, and people could see the interaction between us wasn't something to be feared. These are getting on well. They are, like the questions you can ask is, what is going to happen to the brand? We're growing the business here. We want to change, for the better. We want to add value in Ireland, and we want to do business across Europe. So they could ask questions in those feel it's a very positive thing. So the reaction actually couldn't be better. It was just such an open conversation. I loved it. Now, I'm sure there was a few solicitors and all having going bananas at the time, you know what I mean? Because the formalities actually weren't done when we did the announcement. It was like, it came afterwards.
There's a risk with what you do, but you take the risk on the side of the the team.
The team. Yeah, well, we had to tell the team. We wanted to tell the team before it went out public. I mean, the following morning at 6:30 was when it was going to go out. There was no chance to stand in front of the team and tell them that. You know, so the first thing I did actually was I said, "No, lads, this is between us." Sorry, lads in our terminology means girls. Okay, but you're not to tell anybody. So I'm telling 450 people not to tell anybody. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, that went really well, and I have to say the attitude of the team themselves, the management, the way the AIG interaction, you know, as I said, Jay, that was just fantastic.
Honestly, I'm just wondering, in the world of social media, what impact would it have had if some of those employees went on Twitter or whatever?
I got text from the floor while I was up there. I got a bing from the floor. You know, who are you kidding? Like. So it was fair enough.
Okay, so you're talking about from BUPA to Quinn to Laya, now another change. In terms of the culture of the business, has it changed radically in those different...
Well, I honestly don't think there's a major change this time. I think it's, the cultures do match really well. Laya Healthcare is Laya Healthcare, and we're going to continue on. So, I honestly don't believe that. I think what we have done a lot is refined what we've done. Like, we're down now, when I remember first starting out, we had a ridiculous amount of values and a vision that I could never recite, that sort of way. And I remember wordsmithing and having gone through the value wheel, particularly in the UK, I have to say, rather than in Ireland with BUPA, and all well-meaning and all that, but it was, you need a PhD to understand the essence of it, right?
Yeah.
So now we're back to, we've articulated our values in very 4 straightforward values. It's grounded, no bullshit. Yeah. It is the way it is. We're fair. Yeah. And even from a team point of view, we do performance-related pay, and it's a pretty different way we do it. We do it on a monthly basis. Everybody in our organisation has performance-related pay. Okay. You know what I mean? Now there's different periods for it, but most people are on monthlies. Then you've quarterlies and yearlies, depending on the role, etc. But every single month, we go into a room and we get the reports back and we walk through to make sure it's fair. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's not. You don't want to, if you're doing discretionaries, which are few and far between, they've got to be fair. And they work both ways, by the way. You get ups and downs in discretionary, but they've got to be objective and making sure across the board they make sense. Right?
So grounded,
fair, caring. We do care. The last one I have the greatest difficulty with myself, because I don't know what innovative means anymore. Because you want to be innovative, you want to change, and yet you're in a regulatory environment and you're changing. So our innovations, for example, are centred around our products and how we produce our products. And I think, I would see far more potential in the innovation side of our values and what
practices would you have around innovation, trying to, get those ideas?
Exactly.
How do you do that?
Instilling the practices and having the workshops. We would have, for example, working groups which were, they were called the PIGS, which was the PIGS. Okay. We changed that. That acronym came out totally by accident. Is that okay? Okay. So the innovation groups, right? Okay. Whatever. So they're getting a new name these days. They decided that PIGS wasn't working well. But on a formal basis, basically we got a cross section of interested parties. We do research. We have. By interested parties, I mean internally interested. I mean our underwriters who are, we've got Ellipse Life who are underwriters. You've got, basically a Swiss influences there. You've got our market research people, and we regularly meet then. There's a formal meeting every quarter on that, and then every month they meet on subgroups of that as well, with the idea of bringing out those innovations. And they really come across as, there's 3 pillars to those. You've got if I can put it that way, what you and I would know as the private medical insurance business. And then you have the adjacencies, something that's very close to private medical insurance, but not quite medical insurance. And then you have the diversification, which means anything else you think yourself, some of the ideas a lot of those ideas will never float.
Okay.
But you're looking at, you've got the telemedicines, you're looking at, we have a significant wellness business, and partnering up with those and seeing what you can do, how you can improve the offering that you give to your customer. It's that kind of, I see the biggest challenge there.
That wellness piece seems
Yeah.
to be growing hugely across all businesses. I mean, I
Yeah.
even saw in your culture audit, I think there's a dental app or something that you're launching.
Oral,
I mean,
we used Oral Eye. Again, a lot of this is done with partners.
Just explain what that is and how that works.
Well, in the particular app or the
Yeah, I was
well,
just fascinated
actually,
to be dead honest that you could do it that way.
Well, to be honest about it, you'd have to get into the detail is, but you're talking about taking a picture, a bit like Snapchat.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here and my daughter, who's in foreign parts at the moment, Snapchat me this morning kind of stuff. It really reminded me of this.
Yeah, okay.
Where, you take a picture of your mouth,
Yeah.
you send it on to this group of dentists who look down your mouth and say, 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, it is that kind of way. Very constructive, I have to say.
Yeah.
I did it myself now, and I'm not the best person to go into the dentist, I have to say. I haven't followed up on it yet. I need a bit of work to do on that one.
Okay,
right?
but that whole area of kind of, the wellness, rather than dealing with sickness, you're trying to drive the wellness.
Absolutely.
Is a huge part.
Like if you look at what we've done in Super Troopers, for example, that's another example of, you're trying to get the younger kids active and trying to get them to live healthily. We would have, the likes of Alan Quinlan would be an ambassador for us, particularly on the mental health side of your mental well-being. We have a physical side as well in the Carol Henry, who I really have to pay more attention to myself, I have to say, especially after Christmas. I had good intentions for January, which didn't work out, I have to say, but February is going to be February's going to be the new one. But that aside, we partner with a lot of companies in the occupational health side, what was traditionally called the occupational health side. We want to be one of the biggest providers in the country, of where we dovetail with companies, and basically, they want to outsource their own occupational health side or drive wellness programs through their organisations, and we provide that facility.
We're just seeing a huge explosion of organisations doing so much in that whole area. I think it's really inspiring.
But it's a significant part of our business as well.
Yeah.
It has been for a good while.
So, just trying to get a sense of you as a leader, right? Because I was reading the comments that come through to us as part of the assessment. I see, people, they really seem to care small little things. About the Christmas party, the fact that you were at the door and you welcomed each and every one of them in, shaking their hands. Now, that probably didn't mean an awful lot to you, or that wasn't kind of thought out as a strategy.
No, definitely wasn't thought out as a strategy. That's not.
But talk to me about, what makes you the way you are? What are your inspirations in terms of, have you changed as a person, as a leader over the last number of years? Do you analyse yourselves? Do you try and get better all the time?
Yes is the answer. I don't see it being as formal as it should be in ways, right? I do think that as a management team, for example, we do look in at ourselves. We do get counselling and advice. I do go to counselling, and which would be very cynical about. I always remember.
So you're calling that counselling rather than coaching, is it?
No, I'm saying from my own self. I'm being personal about it. From a personal point of view, I would see, I go to someone and I have a chat of how things are going and try to work things out in my own life, in my own head. And, I wish it was a bed of roses. It isn't always a bed of roses, that's for sure. And I am. I would say, though, in general, I have an approach which is starting with fun. I always said, when I go into work in the morning, I go into work in the morning because I need the money. I have to earn a living. Get over that bit, right? And I always, when you have people, particularly new people in the organisation, they have a fear that they're going to a fear of the job and a fear of saying, you just want to say, look, everybody else is here for the same reason.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get that over with. Try not to make somebody else's life a misery. Yeah. And and I'm in the same vein, there's no reason not to have fun doing this, right? And sometimes it's very serious business, but you know what? It's life as well. We have to have a bit of fun doing it. Actually, I know there's a relevance to this. I actually graded one yesterday on a case which I thought this was, and I mean this, I'm very proud of this. Actually, this is something that happened to me yesterday, and I couldn't believe it. I don't remember this, I wish I did remember it, but it was somebody who I interviewed. And they got the job anyway. Let me start off from that. And right, so they're there saying, "Oh, do you remember interviewing me?" And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, it was it was maybe 10 years ago. I don't know, but it was a
Wow.
long time ago. And he said, "Oh, I remember what you said to me." I said, "I was waiting for something profound, you know." And I said, he said, "What did I say to you?" And he said, "I told you I was pregnant." And I said, straight away I got worried. I said, "Oh God, what did I say next?" You know what I mean? And he said, "Well, don't worry about it. You won't be pregnant forever."
Nice answer.
You know what I mean? So I was glad,
Yeah.
but I know genuinely, and I was proud that she remembered it.
Yeah.
No, I didn't, as it turned out.
Sure.
And that would be my philosophy.
Sure.
If you're hiring somebody for a position, whether they're pregnant or not, in my head, if they're applying for the job on a bona fide basis, that's fine. Do you know what I mean? You have to make up your own mind after that based on the person.
And so your
it was kind of that.
Your senior team, do you have any strategies in terms of trying to keep them together so that they're focused and they, feed into the business from a strategy point of view? They're all performing at the best they can possibly be. Because obviously, just talking about different businesses we'd have exposure to, some of them struggle to have a unity in that team and to really get the talents of all the people working together in a unified way.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a hell of a challenge. I think the key word there is team. And I'd go back to what we talked about earlier on, and this time I'd go back to the coaching element of that. Again, we operate together as a team, and we specifically take time out. We do have a process by which we go through ourselves and looking at ourselves. I have to stall here a second now, right? Because I've been through processes which drove me mad. I used to call them navel gazing, whatever, right? But these were a lot of what I do is, and I believe, is action based. I need action. I find it hard to get this element in my head, which is an intangible something in philosophical only. It's got to come down to something meaningful. And I think the action is the key to that. And by that I mean, for example, as a team, we do discuss how we're getting on. We do get a third party to gather us as a team and go through, various methodologies. It depends what we look at. They differ from time to time depending who, but we give ourselves time out to do that. And the practical things, for example, this year we've gone back to insisting that there's one-to-ones between the team as well as with me. So we have our formal executive meetings on a monthly basis, then we have semi-executive meetings on an informal basis where we get together and there is no agenda.
Okay.
So you have an hour and a half where we're just, okay, what's on your mind, John, today?
Yeah.
Tell us, whatever is, and we do have fairly robust discussions now. We're not the politest with each other, I would say, but we also ensure that we get to an action or a stop on it, right?
Okay.
And then on the one-to-ones, they're very helpful. So now instead of, like, John, you're talking to me on a one-to-one, at that basis, you're also talking to each other on the one-to-ones.
Okay.
So, if there's any element of friction or cooperation or whatever else that needs to happen or be resolved, I think they do help. Okay. And that's actually a very formal process with us. We have done it now, I think, on at least 3 times last year.
Okay.
The other thing that happened last year, which we've done and came out naturally, but we did a review of each area. Along with the business reviews that take place and when actions like, projects are delivered or products are launched or whatever else, those milestones during the year get celebrated. But in addition to that, this year, what we did is we looked back on 2014 and said, okay, this is what IT achieved in the overall picture. And when you look at everything together, you think, God, that's a lot. Or when you look at the product structure and the values you've done and what we have delivered over the course of the year, you say, God, that's a lot. You still might challenge various elements of the delivery and whatever else from a practical point of view, but I think it was great that the team were able to recognise as a whole what's going on. Still working through some of them. We're still waiting for 1 or 2 areas to come through, but that's...
So one of the things there in those conversations that would take place, the one-to-ones and then the one-to-ones with you, is that line between honesty and kind of respect or empathy for the person who maybe you're being honest to, in that, you're maybe not giving them all positive messages. How do you balance that?
Upfront. I think on the... first of all, across the organisation, we have spent a lot of effort on the appraisals and how the appraisals get integrated in with our values, and there's a big effort on that. But on my own personal journey, let's put it that way, in dealing with the team, very blunt, and you get it back, right? And it's not. I think there's an element of trust there to begin with. It's respect. You know, one or two of the executives did want help, and they got the help, and we got them in. But I didn't undermine them by, the coach that came in didn't have conversations with me on the side. And when they got the objectives and the scope set, the executive and I were sitting together.
Yeah.
The team members were there with the coach, and we went through what the objectives and scopes were. And when feedback sessions took place, they took place with the executive, and then they took place with me, not the other way around.
Okay.
Yeah. And the worst thing you could do to me, if you ever come to do business, I personally hate when people get undermined.
When they
get undermined.
Oh, yeah.
So in other words, if you want to do business, I think that you have to be upfront with it.
Okay.
Don't jump the line. Be respectful to the people who brought you in. If you're asked a question, be honest about it. Does that make sense, John?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think if you kick that, that's integrity. I think that.
Integrity, and one of the areas that most organisations are struggling with is the performance appraisal piece and trying to drive performance. They want to drive performance, but nobody in the organisation seems to be particularly good at managing people's performance. We launched a new question this year, which was that the organisation manages underperformance well, and the benchmark for this question is really through the floor. It's really weak. So it's like as if Irish, maybe we'll benchmark it globally, but Irish people in general find that hard to have the tough conversation where somebody isn't carrying the load.
Well, first of all, I'm sitting here and I don't know our own results for the farm. So before I set myself up here, I should mention that, right? But no, I think when I mentioned the performance appraisals, right, on there a few seconds ago, but I think on performance, if I can use rather than appraisal, which I separate out slightly, you've got a reward and recognition bit going on there, and in our case, we genuinely sit down on a monthly basis and have a day where we're going through each pack. Okay. On the performance side. It's very, very formal. It's not, I think it's like the best of a bad lot, particularly when you're doing in a service organisation. There are some areas which are very transactional based. Yeah. The contact centre is easier to manage than the financial area. We would have a utilisation review area, medical, clinical reviews, which would be harder to, one case is not the same as the next case. So, you might be on one case for a month and somebody else could do 10 cases in a day, depending on the case, obviously. So, it's not always as objective as you'd like it to be on the performance side. And I think that's where the fairness comes in. And actually, one of the, for example, relating to universities and how the universities work, semesterization and ensuring that there is an external board, even with semesterization. It's the same thing. You're sitting down as looking at it and saying, okay, is this fair across the board? It's not necessarily looking at the one paper or the one role. It's looking, is that fair relative to everybody else? Are these continually being hit? And we're talking about 20% to 30% of their remuneration.
Wow, okay.
So it needs to be fair and seen to be fair. And I would honestly say it's done both ways. So you equally say, no, that's not fair to take that off somebody because that doesn't seem to be fair or consistent. On the other hand, you'd equally be saying, actually, that should, I know you're giving a discretion there, it warrants more than the amount you're given or whatever. That's kind of that kind of discussion.
You've used the word a lot throughout this. Obviously, from a great place to work, the defining feature is the level of trust that exists, and sometimes organisations find it hard to understand that that's the key driver. But naturally, you seem to drop it into conversation. So, could you talk a little bit about? I'm
trying to think when I said it there.
no. Just could I get a sense of how important trust is to you as the currency that you build with people and that you maybe live your life by?
Yeah, I'm actually genuinely uncomfortable in a way, trying to put myself up on any pedestal of that. I think that people make our business. We have a bond of trust that we have to keep, right? On my own personal basis, I will do what I say. You know what I mean? I will match what I do. If I don't, I'll explain to you why I can't. You know what I mean? I'd like to be able to do it all the time. There are certain times where, elements get out of your control. Fundamentally, I think that if you have a good team and you operate, you'll only have a good team if you can trust them and they can trust you. By the way, I can't do everybody's job. You know, I have an awful expression, it's terrible. You know, why have a dog and bark yourself? You know, why hire somebody or have a member of your team who's an expert at doing something and then you do it for them? I trust people to do their job and they trust me to have their back. You know, and it's a two-way thing. That really works well, I think, most of the time. The problem is if it goes wrong, and seriously wrong, the difficulty I have then is getting over it. You know, I would have a serious, if you break the trust, it is a serious event. And sometimes you have to understand the facts. You know, actually it's one of the key learnings I would say. Years ago I understood the difference. You know, you need the facts. Sometimes what you see isn't necessarily what's actually happening. They're not, you know, people had this reaction because of something, or they did something because of something that you're not aware of. So sometimes you have to breathe in and say, I'm going to get the facts, especially if the trust is broken. I prefer not to have it broken, mind you.
And I asked earlier about sort of inspirational people in your life, and particularly, I don't know if there's people that, you know, that trust, desire of trust comes from. Are there any people in your life who you've looked to?
Yeah, there's loads of people. I know it sounds terrible, but I number one, my mother. Okay. My mother was a business lady. You know, she was a hairdresser and a very formidable woman. She still is, by the way. Okay. A formidable woman, and I have to say that she would be a person who gave us a great sense of values. You know, everything. Took actions which seemed strange and unusual at the time, which I won't particularly go into now, but in the era we were in, people didn't do that, you know, and get involved with certain people who you'd look at differently. Everybody else would look at differently. When they came to your door, she dealt with them very courteously and nicely, while the perception would have been handled them differently elsewhere. And I think that gave me a great sense of it. It also give you a good understanding of business when you're neutralising hair and you get a tip. You know what I mean? As a young fella, hey, okay, this looks dumb, it's not cool, but I just got a tip for doing that nicely. So you know, the incentivization works there. So I would actually highlight my mother in this first instance. The other thing that was great for me was the Scouts. Okay. I was in the Scouts. I loved the Scouts. That was great. From being, you know, Scout member to patrol leader to, I thought the Scouts was a great organisation. And I know they got a lot of bad press as time went on, and I think probably in the main undeserved. You know, I think there's certain people and bad apples everywhere, but generally I thought they were a fantastic organisation. If I was to say anything inspired me as a young person growing up and as a young adult, that's what did it, you know.
In terms of running a business, any challenges that you feel you've faced that have been tough moments? And that maybe you've learned from?
I think we talked about the various transitions we've been through. I think they were definitely learning experiences. I do enjoy adversity, I have to say. It works well. I think learning, for example, how the government works and all that was a new experience for me originally, and getting into the handle of it. And I've learned to respect a lot of what goes on in politics now. I actually would look at politicians and say, why are you doing this? You know, there's an element of, I honestly admire, like, I think of Michael Noonan and, you know, what he's doing, and, you know, I wouldn't, if you asked me 10, 15 years ago, I would have had a different perception of Michael Noonan, but today I think, fair dues to you, you know, I think that's, whether you agree or disagree with what he's doing, you know, he's an able man and he's giving service, and I think, you know, I think that's a different way of looking at it. I think our own team, the experiences we've been through, with both in Ireland and the UK and elsewhere, I think the experiences, I would say each of them I got fantastic lessons from. I think dealing with getting insights from people is great. You know, genuinely, like, I'm not sure if you heard Chris Hatfield last year, did you?
Yes, yeah.
I thought he was fantastic. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. I thought it was brilliant. It was one of these inspirational, you know. Absolutely. I really wouldn't want to go see him again because I think it would spoil it. You know what I mean? But, you know, I thought he was great.
So you talk about big picture. He's seen the world from such a different angle than everybody else.
And yet he could sing, you know, Bowie, you know.
Absolutely.
It was just, you know, it was great.
So you have obviously given the submission, the culture audit submission to us, which goes through all the practices that you have and your team obviously devised to make Laya a great place to work. When you look at those, I mean, are there any ones that stand out for you? Because just for me, one of the things is you did an advert campaign and you took a different approach to that.
Yeah, well, first of all, on the document itself, I talked about doing the business reviews or having the reviews of each area. It is a great review, and as we talked about, I think it would be great to look back on this in 10 years' time and see the book and say, oh God, remember we did that? There's two things stand out, actually. I have to say, the Ice Bucket Challenge, personally, I am glad I wasn't in the office that day. I mean, the poor sods who went through that. Particularly Doreen, who's a very slender lady there. There was an element of glee as the water was being poured on her. But no, on the advert, what we do is all-inclusive, I have to say. The team, not alone on that advert, one of the things we did, we got the team involved in a lot of our video graphics, I think they're called, or whatever. If you go to our website, you'll see various information, be it about life insurance or health insurance, or about the levy, whatever, and they were done by the team. I have to say I was involved in some of them myself, and I had about 20 takes with me, okay? I just couldn't. They gave me a script. Do not give me a script. Give me a bullet, I'll manage, but the script was...
Well, sure, this took about 20 takes too, didn't it? I'm only messing. This is one take.
I'm okay with this. You didn't give me a script, you see. But no, on the advert thing, then we got significantly involved. Actually, there are a lot of the props along the way, or members of our team standing there. I'm not sure some of them were disappointed. I remember one particular lady. My head is there. If you look at my head, you can see my head, and in fairness, it's a very nice head. I have to say, it's a Sandy there. Is that okay? But
it's a value thing, isn't it? I mean, like you value the people, and therefore you include them. And
we had fun doing it.
Concept.
We had fun doing it. And even going back to the videos, the internal videos, I got some slagging myself for the takes, because you do it in front of everybody.
It's important to be humble, I think.
I found actually I couldn't read. That's what I discovered.
I know that feeling. But that philosophy of actually really being inclusive, because one of the questions that we have in the survey element of what we do is around this kind of including people in decision making. And from an Irish point of view, the results are quite low. So Irish organisations seem to be slow to include everybody in decisions that affect their area. They tend to make the decisions from on high and hand them down, and that actually makes people feel a little bit, I wasn't part of that. So this power of bringing people into decisions, collaborating with people, so that they're more, engaged and bought in. What's your view on that?
100%. I mean, to be honest with you, I would never consider ourselves hierarchical. We're just not hierarchical. And when you go to other organisations that are, it takes you a while to realise that they are hierarchical. Even, I did again, and BUPA was a really good organisation, I have to say. But I remember I was Director of Operations, and I was the only director who ended up in Manchester, because at the time they had this idea that they were going to spread the directors out, and about 60% of all operations were in Manchester, so it seemed like the right place to be. A couple of different things about it. First of all, I was in Manchester, and they were going to have the executive meetings every second month in Manchester. Of course, never happened. The other thing as well is I was based on the 7th floor, and genuinely I had a glass office. So it didn't wear well with me at all. And I had a very nice lady, Jane, who learned more. We learned a bit about each other, but she was quintessentially English, I have to say. Yeah. And she looked after me well and made sure nobody got near me, which was the worst thing for me, if possible. So I ended up moving to the 4th floor in an open plan office, totally going the reverse. Because of my travel arrangements, I wouldn't have been in the office very long. It wasn't something that I was adhered to, and I learned so much and had so much fun on the floor. And I didn't know that business well, but when you were on the floor, you got to do it. Everything from, they did Childline, they did a whole pile of other things on a regular basis from the office as well. And I genuinely wouldn't have known those sort of things. The way the crack that went on was equally as good in Manchester as it was in Cork. Do you know what I mean? I have to say that it was there as well. It was just because of the different structure, we weren't aware of it. Now, it took me a while to figure that out, right? How do you instill that across the organisations then? That's the challenge. It's next to impossible, I think. If the structures are there already, it's very, very difficult to reverse out of. But if you're evolving in it, and if you've brought it up as part of your culture from the start, then it's a lot easier.
Okay.
Yeah.
So fun is key. Having a clear strategy seems to be absolutely key.
Yeah.
This idea of being able to inform people and communicate, but in a very relaxed and personal way. Having values that aren't just on the wall,
Yeah.
but that are really lived values that you can actually relate to on a constant basis is
Yeah.
what I'm hearing from you. And having a challenging environment where you're really being upfront with people and telling them the good and the bad seems to be important. We have a huge amount of organisations who are joining this programme and they're kind of nervous about it because they feel, oh, it might expose us or whatever. But what advice would you give to them? Because we'd see this as a framework to running a business, let alone just being a great place to work.
Yeah, and I see it as first and foremost a benchmark. I think you want to, set your goal within that. Do you want to make the list? Do you actually just want to do the assessments in the first instance and say where you sit? It's unfortunate, I think, that you have to be ranked. Part of me doesn't like that, and part of me sees you have to be as well. And I think that's a challenge to you rather than for me, I have to say, because eventually it's the law of diminishing returns. You have to make a decision yourself. If you want to, and I'm not taking away from any of the participants on this, and genuinely, I know what effort goes into it, but we're in this not to be on a particular position. We are in this because we want to understand how we can get better. We want to improve things. What are the areas that we can improve on? And it's not alone this we do. We do other surveys. We try to match ourselves. And a survey is a survey, but we're trying to do something different here. We're trying to pinpoint what are the elements that we need to improve on. What's the assessments? What are the let's put it this way, I don't want to schematize or whatever, make a system out of everything, but at the same time, you do want to be able to replicate, you want to ensure fairness, which means consistency, which means you have the same guidelines, so you need to get better and better at that.
And it's interesting you should say that because we rank once a year, that's it. Every other time we promote the organisations in a general form, not a ranking, because that to me it's an accreditation. It's about getting to great, and then the challenge is staying there. And just that final piece of advice then, if you were to sort of look back at your time of creating these great workplaces the whole way along, for somebody who's starting on the journey for the first time, kind of 3 bits of advice that you'd give them that might help them in terms of just creating a great workplace.
The first thing I always say is there's only one way to eat an elephant. It's a bite at a time. So don't try to do everything at once. Just look at it, understand what you're about. I genuinely believe that myself. You have a team. You've got to keep the trust in the team. Have a good guiding coalition that looks after the customer and the team. And that's probably, I'll put that as first. Put that as first. And within that then, if you want to get anything done, you need to have a guiding coalition. You need to have people who are on your side with you. It doesn't have to be everybody to start with, just a small few who are willing to go with it, who are willing to take the quick wins, who are willing to run with the idea, even if it initially seems impossible or illogical. There's that small bite that can be taken, and that would be my toughest work there, John.